Hello, everyone. Hopefully, you can hear us and see us. We're back after a 2-week break. We were on vacation, and I was on vacation, and so the podcast was nothing. But it's back. We had a little summer break, and now we're back for the fall/autumn time. I'm so bad now. I say everything in the American way, and all of my friends hate me in real life. They're like, "Oh, you're such an American." I'm like, "Yeah, I know. I'm sorry, guys." I say, "Yeah, it's fall now." They go, "What do you mean fall? It's autumn."
It's fall.
Yeah.
You have the YouTube link for me?
Yes. One sec. And for those who don't have the context for my claim just then, the reason why I speak in American is because I have to write in American English for my job. Windows Central is an American website, and so America, and so everything I have to every word I put to paper, it has to be Americanized, and so in my head, I've just the American lingo is sort of just taken over like a virus.
You got to learn to talk American.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess that's good enough. Now, okay, the tweets are going out. They are now live. Just let me retweet this stuff. Hold on.
Oh yeah, I'll do. I'll retweet it on the only social network that matters.
There is truth to that. Huh, I don't see it on Blue Sky yet. Guess it's not going out on Blue Sky.
R.I.P.
Whatever. Can't be bothered. Sorry, Blue Sky people. Maybe next time. Let's see. Oops. That's how I wanted. I'm being dinged on Slack. Okay, I am now recording.
I'm now recording.
3, 2, 1, clap. Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 378 for September 4th, 2025. Hey everyone, Deanna Rubino here, joined Zac Bowden for another exciting episode of the Windows Central Podcast. We are back after a little 2-week summer hiatus as Zac had a vacation. I did not. But that's okay. This week we'll be talking about, of course, the latest on Windows 11, the mobile plans app being retired. We'll explain what that's all about. A Microsoft engineer saves Windows mixed reality. PowerToys gets light dark mode toggle. That is going to be pretty cool. And Windows 11 handheld gaming mode impressions that Zac had. Plus, we'll briefly touch on the Google court ruling and how it could potentially affect Microsoft. And I guess we'll talk about any other cool stuff that's happening in tech. Zac, how are you doing on this fine Thursday?
I'm pretty good. I'm feeling well rested after my week, or just over a week long vacation. How are you?
Not too bad. Definitely busy week in a lot of ways, although it's kind of glad the summer's over. We've had pretty nice weather. We're already in our fall mode, as we like to say. And of course, pumpkin spice is coming in like a sandstorm, and I love it. I'm all about the pumpkin spice stuff. Funny fact, my favorite thing is the Special K pumpkin spice cereal. And I bought so much of it last year that it was able to last me the entire year.
Wow, that's incredible.
Now, to be fair, it's not like I'm eating it every day. It's only like special occasions, a couple of times a month. but I had enough boxes to last me through the entire year, which I
Would you say they are special occasions?
Yes, special occasions. Yes.
I'm sorry.
The most disappointing thing I've had so far was pumpkin spice goldfish crackers.
Ooh.
Now, I say disappointing, and they teamed up with Dunkin' Donuts. So it's like Dunkin' Donuts branding pumpkin spice on a goldfish package. They're good. Don't get me wrong. They taste delicious, but they taste like graham crackers and they don't taste anything like pumpkin spice. So I don't know what that's about, but I don't know. I'll update, even though no one's asking for it. I'm going to update this podcast every week with my pumpkin spice because I'm always like intrigued by what food product is going to get it this year. I'm looking for pumpkin spice vodka. They kind of had one. I kind of tried one last year, but it was really disgusting. It was like way too much. I just need that subtle hint. But anyways, enough of that. Let's get to the actual news. So what's been happening with Windows 11 these last 2 weeks?
Yeah, so quite a fair bit in regards to feature testing and version releases. We'll start with the Windows 11 version 25H2 stuff. So I think at the tail end of last week, Microsoft finally moved the version 25H2 release into the release preview channel. And as we all know, the release preview channel is usually the last stop before an update begins being made generally available to the public. And so with version 25H2 now in that channel, it's only a matter of time, a mere handful of weeks before Microsoft will formally announce the general availability of version 25H2. And so with it now in that channel, we also know for sure that at least at launch, version 25H2 will have no new features over 24H2. And that's because 25H2 and 24H2 share the same servicing stack. And so features that are built for 24H2 also apply to version 25H2 and vice versa. These two releases will basically share the same features for the majority of their life cycle on the market. And so for those who have sort of been hoping or waiting to see what 25H2 brings to the table, the answer is nothing, or at least not much. There are some minor changes with it. It actually removes more features than it adds. It's removing PowerShell 2.0 and the Windows Management Instrumentation command line feature. So if you're somebody who used to use those, I wouldn't update to 25H2. But for most people, I think the removal of those features will mean basically nothing. And then there's also some group policy stuff for commercial customers as well. But for end users, for consumers, anything that comes to 25H2 will also apply to 24H2. And so that means things like the new start menu, which is yet to begin rolling out officially, will apply to both. And so that's basically all there is to it with version 25H2. People have been asking me, what's the point of 25H2 then? Why don't they just stick with 24H2? It's a great question. I believe the reason why they still do these annual feature version releases is because for support lifecycle reasons, every new version of Windows 11 has an additional 24 to 36 month support window. And while they could, I guess, easily extend version 24H2s if they wanted to, I think at this point it's just formula. It's like, yep, this is how we do it. Every new version release has a new up to 36 month support cycle. And that's just how they're going with it. And so, yep, this year's version 25H2 release will be very minor, almost non-existent. But the good news there means it won't change anything drastically. Users don't need to be afraid to update to it. They can just do it and they won't really notice anything different. At least at first. Over the next, 2026, that could change. I know Microsoft has the ability to release features on 25H2 and not have them come to 24H2. They likely won't really do that for many things because it doesn't make sense to if they've built it for 25H2. It's fully compatible with 24H2, so you might as well just give it to all users. But towards the end of next year, that's when things might start to change because I believe that's when 24H2 is supposed to exit support for consumers, and that's when you might start seeing features sort of being released exclusively for 25H2. But then, of course, by then, we'll be at 26H2, and so the cycle rinses and repeats. You're in the release preview channel, aren't you, Dan?
Sure I am on pretty much all my devices.
Have you updated?
Yep, it was over the weekend. I got the updates, and do you know there's no new features?
Yeah, there's nothing.
Yeah, obviously it's a running joke here, but I mean, I got the update and I got it pretty much on, I think, most of my release previews now. And there's nothing new. I think the biggest changes, if any, just come usually through the store, through the apps sometimes. but yeah.
I mean, with Microsoft calls it continuous innovation. This continuous innovation effort sort of means that these version updates are irrelevant because you get new features every month at this rate now. Like the new start menu, whenever that begins rolling out, it will just roll out as part of some monthly update in the next few months. Nothing's tied to these major version updates anymore. The only time where it really happens is when a new version update also brings with it a new platform release, but that's not happening this year. Could happen next year. We don't know yet, but yeah, so that's basically it for 25H2. Was there anything else I wanted to add to this story before we moved on to it? I don't believe so. Oh yes, the timing of things. So now we know that it is in the release preview ring, it's likely that the general availability for this release will begin taking place towards the end of this month / early October, which is, that lines up almost perfectly with how it is every year. So that's not a surprise. But if you are somebody who's hanging on to the sort of the actual general availability of this, it seems that it will be a few more weeks and then that will be available. So that's that with 25H2. Of course, there was also some dev and beta channel builds in the last week or two as well. Nothing huge in these builds for testing, but there is some actually interesting stuff here. So Click to Do is getting even more AI actions, which is always fun to see. I like these AI actions. I actually really do enjoy Click to Do. I found it works great most of the time. Every now and then it struggles to identify text. I'll be like, come on, this is text. Can you not see it? And it'll be like, no, I have no idea what you're saying to me. But most of the time, it's fine. But this week / last week, they started testing a new feature called Microsoft 365 profile cards. And so whenever you're looking at, I'll read it word for word. It says, rather than opening Microsoft Outlook or Teams or anywhere to look up someone's profile, get straight to their info about them thanks to the integration of live persona cards from Microsoft 365 and Click to Do. See how to contact them or past collaborations without leaving your flow. This new action is available on emails seen in Click to Do. Press with the Windows key and click in an email, and you should see the contact card. So that's nice. Wherever you are in the system, if you're looking at an email, you can just open Click to Do and find out more information about the colleague or person it is that you're communicating with via email. That's super cool. The only annoying thing about that is that again, Click to Do is a manual process. You have to enter it manually to get access to all of its capabilities. I do wish Windows would become more automatic in that regard and just be like, hey, I can see you're chatting to this person, here's a profile card, and just have it appear on screen without me having to go into Click to Do first. Hopefully maybe that's a feature coming down the line. Windows Share is now getting a search box. So whenever you go into the Windows Share interface, if you're looking for an app and you can't find it, you can just search for it now and install it, which is quite nice. And then the last big feature in testing is a feature that we have talked about in the past. I think Microsoft accidentally leaked it back at Build, but it's now officially in testing. And it's a feature called, what is it officially called? It doesn't seem to have an official name, but it's basically a feature that allows you to resume apps from your phone on your desktop. And it will appear as a UI on the taskbar with the app icon in question. Very similar to the Handheld feature that iPhone and Mac has. But this works with, at least currently, with Spotify. So Microsoft says we're beginning to gradually roll out the ability to seamlessly resume using your favorite apps from your Android phone on your Windows 11 PC. To start with, you'll be able to resume or continue listening to your favorite Spotify tracks and episodes right from where you left off on the Spotify app on your Android phone. So how this appears on the taskbar is whenever you have the Spotify app open on your phone and you listen to music and stuff and then pause it or swipe it away and you turn on your PC, the Spotify app will appear in your taskbar whether you have it pinned or not with a little phone icon next to it. From there, you can hover over the icon and you'll see a little jump list that pops up that says, hey, resume what you were doing on Spotify on your phone here on your PC. This will even appear, I believe, if you don't have the app installed. So if you have phone link enabled, essentially, but you don't have the app you're just using on your phone, on your PC, but it does support this, cross-device resume feature, it will appear in the taskbar. And when you click on it, it will automatically download the app for you onto your PC. And so this will ideally work with third-party apps. Developers will have to build support for it, of course. What do they call it? Yeah, there's some Microsoft Learn documentation. They call it cross-device resume using Continuity SDK. So if you are a developer and you build an app for Android and you also have a Windows app, this may be something you want to look into because it will allow users to seamlessly bring their content across devices straight through the Windows taskbar. Hopefully Microsoft adds this to more of their apps like Outlook and Word and maybe even Teams because that would make perfect sense, I think. And so that's a nice feature that they're adding to Windows as well. And then there's another thing they're adding. They're adding the percentage battery icon on the lock screen, which is something every platform in the world has had for a long time, and Windows is finally catching up. So those are the sort of big features Microsoft are now in testing and over the last few weeks. Lots of nice stuff there. I think I'm very excited for the cross-device resume thing. Although technically, the Spotify app has always had cross-platform resume. The app itself is actually really universal, and you can actually sync wherever you're signed into Spotify in the app. You can actually play audio from any of those devices already. It's just nice to see that the UI coming to the taskbar built into Windows natively. That's quite nice. So I think that's most of the insider stuff for the week. We can move on to some other non-insider Windows 11 news now. The mobile plans app on Windows 10 and Windows 11. This has always been a weird app because it's always felt like an afterthought, I think. Did it ever get updated with a Windows 11 UI? I don't think it did.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
no.
It was always
pretty gross looking.
Yeah, it wasn't. It very much reminded me of like a Windows Phone app that they just ported over to Windows 10 and then eventually Windows 11 and just sort of left it as is. This was an app that laptops with cellular connectivity had preloaded, which allowed you to go in and basically buy a data plan. So if you had an eSIM built in or whatever it was, you could just go in and buy 5 gig, 10 gig, whatever you needed for usually an extortionate amount of money and get data on your laptop. Microsoft has announced this week / late last week that they are retiring that app. And so what does that mean? It means all cellular Windows PCs have been cancelled. No, I'm kidding. What it means is they're basically they're moving the process for sort of acquiring a mobile plan into the settings app, which will then take you to a website, I believe. Is it, Dan?
I think so.
Yeah. So it's basically they're just changing the process of actually subscribing to a mobile plan. They're getting rid of the old UWP app, and they're just going to replace the experience with something in the settings app, which then takes you to
Which makes more sense. And for two reasons. One, I like that they're putting it to settings because that's like more hard coded into the system. And it's kind of like where you would expect to find it. If you're going into your connections and you have, cellular, but you don't have a SIM card in there and you need an eSIM, like there should be a call to action, right? That helps you get that. The other reason I like that it opens a website and goes to it and allows you to go through the process and how this used to work before. They would have I think it was like UBG or something like that. There was like there was T-Mobile. There were a couple carriers in there and you would just go through the app, which was basically just a web browser anyway, but it was in this like smaller app and you would do things like give it your financial information to sign up for something, right? It just felt a little weird. Whereas when you open up Edge and, or my default browser and I go to a normal like shopping page, I'm going through it and I have all the tools that I'm used to in a browser because those weren't present in this thing. It was completely stripped down. It feels like a more normal onboarding process for purchasing an eSIM. It also, I imagine, allows them to update things a little bit more dynamically, like a storefront.
Yeah.
I mean, technically, they could have done this with the old one, I think, but they like literally never updated it. I'll also say that, fingers crossed, that they're partnering with some good companies because when I've been obviously into the 4G, 5G laptops for a long time, so I'm very familiar with eSIM. And at least in the United States, buying a data-only connection has been kind of expensive. It's just been cost prohibitive, especially if it's something you only want to use once in a while. Now, I know a lot of people will have like some grand $100 AT&T plan, and they're like, oh, I get either tethering for free or I can add a second line for like $10 a month, And sure, but not all of us use that. And at least this will allow people to do things like buy data just for the month and not have to worry about like an automatic renewal or something like that. So I'm hoping that's what happens down the line. And prices have really come down now for eSIM and data only connections. I know like in Europe and everywhere else, they're like, you can get like 2 gigs for like $4 or $5. Hopefully that happens here too. But data is becoming more cheap finally, which makes this a little bit more viable. So.
Yeah, so that's one change that's being made to Windows 11 in the near future. I believe the app itself is being retired in February, so you don't have to worry about it just yet, but that is coming in the near future. And then also in the Windows world this week, a Microsoft employee has released a third-party driver called Oasis, which is in reference to the code name for Windows Mixed Reality, that re-enables functionality for those Windows Mixed Reality headsets on Windows 24H2 with native Steam VR support. So to give this some context, back in 2023, Microsoft announced that it was putting the plug on Windows Mixed Reality. The platform itself was being killed off. But surprisingly, with that announcement, Microsoft also said that the headsets themselves would stop functioning when you update to version 24H2. That release outright pulled like full support for the headsets. And so they wouldn't even work with third-party platforms like Steam VR, which is shocking, frankly. It makes no sense.
It's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, like back in the day, I remember with Windows 95, they had the add-on pack where you can get like pinball and everything like that, but that wasn't shipped natively. Like they should have just had it as like, they should kind of do this with Windows in general, to be honest. They should just have like extra features available on Microsoft's site that you can just go and download and add it to your system, right? So I get pulling WMR because almost no one's using it.
Sure.
But like, yeah, why not make the features as an installable package on their website so people can continue using
Even
it,
then,
right?
it would have been so easy for Microsoft to just build a driver that's just allowed the headset to talk to Steam VR instead, because that's what this Microsoft engineer has done. He has built his own driver, or he says he's reverse engineered a driver that basically re-enables functionality on these Windows Mixed Reality headsets. So if you've got a HP Reverb or some old Dell Windows Mixed Reality headset or a Lenovo one, and you install this third-party driver, you can get it through Steam. It will just start working again, and it will work with Steam VR. So it doesn't talk to the Windows Mixed Reality app or portal. That's not supported now in 24H2. It outright bypasses it, which makes the most sense. Nobody really needs the Windows Mixed Reality platform anymore. You just need the headset, the controllers, and Steam VR, because Steam VR has everything Windows Mixed Reality had plus more or less. And so, this is great news for those who still have an old Windows Mixed Reality headset lying around somewhere. I know I do. I have the first HP Windows Mixed Reality headset. That's what I've got, which I've paired with 2 Dell controllers. So it's a really odd mishmash of things, but it all works together really well. And I did try it on 24H2 with Steam VR, and it works great. It feels native. It's seamless. It's really, really nice. Now, there are some caveats to the driver. It's not open source, so do with that information as you will. And then not only that, but it only works with PCs with NVIDIA graphics. It doesn't work with AMD and it doesn't work with Intel. The developer says the reason for that is AMD and Intel graphics drivers don't have certain features to support this. It only works with NVIDIA graphics drivers. And so if you are using a PC with an AMD card or an Intel card, you are unfortunately out of luck. But those of you with NVIDIA cards, you can try this and it should work just fine. The process for enabling the headset on 24H2 is super straightforward. It's basically just a command line and it just automatically checks things. You hit OK a couple of times, you unplug it, you plug it back in, and it's good to go. Super seamless. Really cool to see that this is something a Microsoft engineer has put together. He previously worked on HoloLens and the Windows Mixed Reality platform, so it makes sense that this is the person who decided to put this together. So fantastic stuff there. And then last but not least, in regards to the Windows 11 news, PowerToys is finally getting a light and dark mode toggle. Now, this is super interesting because for many people have been asking for this for many years in Windows directly, and it's never come. And now PowerToys is stepping up to do this. Now, I actually happen to know that PowerToys could have done this a long time ago. It's a feature they've been talking about for a long time, and they've never done it, and they've never done it until recently. Well, until now, they've announced that they're going to do it very soon. And as I understand it, the reason why they never did it before, and the reason why Windows itself doesn't have a built-in light dark mode or toggle, automatic toggle, that is because Windows sucks at switching between light and dark mode. A lot of legacy
Yeah.
interfaces, if you do it on the fly, will not switch properly, and that has remained the case for as long as dark mode in Windows has been a thing. Obviously, the modern interface is doing a much better job at dynamically switching between light and dark, but the old interfaces, some of the areas of File Explorer, for example, just suck at it, and so that's why Microsoft never added an automatic light dark mode switch. And what I mean by automatic is you can probably set a time of day where it switches from light mode to dark mode. Most phones can do it. Most tablets can do it. Windows is probably the only modern platform that can't do it. But PowerToys is going to step in and finally add that capability. And so you will be able to use that tool to be able to sort of configure a light dark mode schedule. So in the day, it can be in light mode. And when it gets to nighttime, you can set Windows to automatically switch into dark mode. I would really like to see this built into Windows. It's shocking that it isn't, but at least PowerToys is finally giving us the option. You got any thoughts on that, Dan? Is that a feature you can see yourself using?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, I think, it is weird because Microsoft keeps pushing this idea of like making Windows work with your phone more and more.
Yeah.
And they want to, even the start menu design is to kind of replicate the phone experience.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of have this stuff on all our smartphones. So it is kind of weird that the theming for Windows isn't more dynamic.
Yeah.
So, if you remember too, some of the Lenovo laptops even have like a physical button to change the themes. So it's like, I don't know. I think this is good, but this is what PowerToys is for. The good thing about this is since PowerToys is like technically Microsoft, it's a way they can kind of incubate and test features, get feedback on them. And sometimes stuff does make a jump from PowerToys to Windows itself. So that could happen here.
Yeah. And I'm hoping that's what is going to happen. I think maybe PowerToys is doing this so that they sort of can kick the Windows team into gear and go, why isn't this here? Every other platform on the planet has this. Why doesn't Windows? Because we also know Microsoft is working on actually adding some more dark mode interfaces to things like File Explorer, the copy dialog and file properties, I believe, or at least some dialogues within File Explorer are supposed to be getting dark mode at some point in the next few months, finally after a decade. So that's nice to see. And so hopefully maybe this is the start of a bigger push to finally complete dark mode, which would be really nice. So yeah, that's basically all of the most recent Windows 11 news. We can now move on to the hands-on time I had with Microsoft's new handheld gaming mode coming soon to Windows 11. So before I went on vacation, I went to Gamescom in Germany. The first time I've been. It was super fun. And while I was there, I had a chance to go hands-on. I want to be one of the first people to go hands-on with Microsoft's new handheld gaming mode coming soon to Windows 11 and shipping. I believe it's shipping first on the upcoming Xbox Ally and Xbox Ally X, which I believe is launching in October. And so, yeah, this was our first time sort of sitting down with this new interface, with this new mode running on top of Windows 11 to see how it performs. And there's actually quite a lot going on there, more than I originally thought. I kind of expected it to just be like just the Xbox app running full screen, and that's basically it. But Microsoft has done bits and pieces to Windows 11 to improve the whole experience with a gamepad, with a handheld controller, or using it on a handheld gaming device. And so let's talk about the experience from boot. So essentially, when you boot the device with this mode enabled, when you log in, you will go straight to the Xbox app. You won't see the Windows desktop. A number of Windows desktop elements aren't loaded in. The taskbar, start menu, and desktop wallpaper don't load in. And by default, Windows is also sets all of your startup apps to disabled. And so nothing, OneDrive doesn't load up. None of that happens in the background. You just load straight into the Xbox app. And the Xbox app has been updated to be a little bit more system level. And what I mean by that is it now has like a time in the top right, as well as your battery status. You can navigate the whole interface with a gamepad, with a controller, with a thumbstick, so you don't have to use the touchscreen or plug in a mouse. And that's one of the biggest changes, frankly. Windows 11 on handhelds currently, you basically have to use the touchscreen because most interfaces in Windows have very poor support for gamepad input. And so, the File Explorer, for example, you can't really interact with the File Explorer at all with a gamepad. I've tried it. You can sort of do some things, but mostly you can't. And so this Xbox app basically just replaces the desktop and goes, hey, everything you want to do now in regards to gaming, you can access with the gamepad, which is fantastic, which means you don't have to use the touchscreen for anything when you're using this game mode, which is great. The Xbox, I'm going to keep calling it an app, but it's actually the interface. It's the dashboard, essentially. It is what replaces the desktop. But the Xbox interface itself now also includes not just Xbox games, but all Windows games. So if you install games through Steam, or if you install games through Epic Games Launcher or GOG, wherever you source your games from, they will appear in the library section of the Xbox app. And so you can go in and launch games through that interface without having to first load up Steam or first load up GOG. That will happen in the background, but Windows does its best to hide it from you. And what I mean by that is, so for example, if you go and launch GTA 5, which is a game I've sourced from Steam, it will have to load up the Steam client, and it will, and you know, Steam likes to throw pop-ups at you whenever you launch it. Like here's a sale, or here's this. Windows will briefly show those, but then it will hide it. And so that's all happening in the background. But as the end user, you've just pressed a single button, and eventually you get into the game. It does take a little while because Steam's doing its thing in the background, but Windows does its best to give you a console-like experience and hide all those pop-ups and clients that are appearing, so that it shows up. Basically, how I did what I saw is when I clicked play. Took a second, then suddenly I saw Steam, then I saw the pop-up, then those disappeared, and then I saw the Rockstar launcher, which was loading, and then I went into the game. Now, that's a flow you'll only experience once you've set the game up. Obviously, every time you run a new game through Steam, you have to set it up and whatnot, and that's a process, and a lot of that still does require the touchscreen. But once you've done that, which only needs to be done once per... You know, if you sign into Steam once and then download a game, that only has to happen one time every time you install a new game. But yeah, that's a hugely improved sort of flow versus what Windows Desktop is, which is like, I've got to go into Steam, I've got to go and click play, or I click in big picture mode, then I can go to the game, launch the game. It's just one button and you wait, which is fantastic. My Xbox games don't even have any pop-ups. They're almost Xbox console-like. So Halo Infinite for the Microsoft Store, for example, you click on that once, you get a splash screen, the game loads. Beautiful. Games from GOG, I tried as well. The GOG launch is a little bit more iffy. It doesn't take controller input, I found, and it sometimes likes to just sit on screen. So you'd have to get it out of the way, or you'd have to hit play within the GOG launcher to get into the game itself. But that's, you know, Microsoft is doing its best, but these game launches also need to sort of play ball a little bit, I think. So that's the sort of flow. And then obviously we've talked about the multitasking switches before. That's completely been redone for gamepad input. It's much smoother as well. And what it does, I found, is it makes switching between multiple games and apps really easy. One of the issues Windows 11 desktop has is, you know, when you want to switch between different apps and games, it's a whole process. You've got to like Alt Tab or go back to the desktop first and go into the start menu to find your other apps. This is as simple. You just press and hold the X button, and you press the left and right bumpers to switch between all your running apps and games. And what it does is it makes running multiple games at once super easy. I don't know why you'd want to run multiple games, but I had Halo Infinite running, I had The Witcher 3 running, and I had GTA 5 running, and I was able to switch between them on the fly within a second, which you just can't do on a handheld running in desktop mode. So that's really nice to see as well. And then there's some other optimizations as well that they've made. So while you can get into apps and run apps like the File Explorer or Windows settings, you can't run them in Windows. Everything runs in full screen, and if you try to like minimize an app or make an app run in sort of windowed mode, it won't do it. With the shout says no, and it just keeps it running full screen. The startup apps area in Windows settings has a new option. So as I mentioned, all of the apps are set to not start up when you're in handheld gaming mode. But there is an option to configure apps to start only once you enter into the desktop mode. And so that's super interesting as well. So if you say you have Steam, or you do want things like OneDrive and Discord to run once you choose to enter into desktop mode, that's something you can configure. So that's really nice to see. And the process for entering into the desktop mode can be done through the game bar, and it can also be done through the multitasking switcher as well. Which will just basically load up the rest of the interface that wasn't loaded when you first logged into the device. So the taskbar appears, the start menu, and your desktop wallpaper. You can switch back into the full screen mode through the task view interface or the game bar. And when you do that, Windows will prompt you to restart. The reason for this, Microsoft says, is it improves performance because it allows the system to sort of not load those additional resources for things like the start menu. Interestingly, apparently those elements can't be unloaded once they're loaded without a restart. But if you want the best performance, then you can do that. And you don't have to do that. You can just go straight into the full screen mode without restarting if you want. But I guess performance won't be as good. We weren't able to test performance differences between the two modes. I would be very surprised if there's much of a performance difference. I know Microsoft is touting a performance difference, but I really would be surprised if there's anything that improves actual gameplay performance. I can totally see there being a improved startup time and improved game loading time, but once you get into a game, the resources that aren't loaded in the background for things like the desktop are so minor, but it's like I really can't. I'd be very surprised, let's put it that way, if there is a massive performance difference between the two modes. But I guess that remains to be seen. So yeah, this experience is supposed to launch first on the Xbox Ally, but I do believe it will come to all handhelds. I don't think Microsoft has confirmed that, but I think it will happen. And then the other thing I want to say, people are asking me, well, will this be able to run on, say, a desktop gaming PC? And I don't see why it couldn't, but at least as far as I'm aware, the current implementation, the answer is no, because it's built around screen size. And I believe the screen size is 10 inches or 11 inches, something like that. And so if you're using a device with a display larger than 10 inches, this mode won't even appear for you. You won't even have an option to turn it on, which is a shame. I don't know why they've built it like that, but they have. But
because if you have a desktop, you should be rocking 64 gigs, you wuss.
64 gigs.
Actually, to be fair, if you're playing a desktop PC, in theory, you could just upgrade your hardware to brute forces. I think this is obviously a good idea, kind of better than nothing, although I'm still... So tell me, in a nutshell, if you could, why would I just even keep this and not just load SteamOS on?
Well,
is it just so I can access other game libraries, which technically I can still do on SteamOS anyway? I believe there are workarounds for that.
Yeah, I mean, basically what it gives you is the freedom of Windows, but with an interface that isn't a pain in the backside to use with a gamepad. That's basically what it is. Essentially, think of the Xbox dashboard on a console. That's super easy to navigate with a controller, and nobody I think has any complaints with that. It's get into your games easy, and you can switch between games on the fly super easy. This is essentially the same thing brought to Windows 11, and that's one of the reasons. One of the things that makes SteamOS so viable is that interface, that gamepad orientated interface, and so that's what Microsoft is really addressing with this new handheld gaming mode. The other side of the coin, which is the performance side, does remain to be seen. We know SteamOS technically runs Windows games better, which is absurd, but apparently it's true. Microsoft is touting performance gains with this new handheld mode on Windows. Again, I would be very surprised if it's doing enough to make those games run at a similar level as they do on SteamOS. And again, that's not all games. Some games run about the same already, but there have been examples of games running on SteamOS that run better because they're running on SteamOS versus Windows. So, that remains to be seen if that's the case. But it really does come down to, if you buy a device that comes with Windows on it, a lot of people probably don't want to fuss around with installing a different operating system. And so Windows is being improved to the point where you wouldn't want to do that anyway. And yeah, just the breadth of, I guess, compatibility. There's no issues with potential, anti-cheat systems, and you can run older Windows games as well with no compatibility issues as well. Whereas you might get some compatibility issues through SteamOS and is it called Proton? Yes, the emulation or the translation layer on SteamOS. So yeah, it's just, I think, overall going to just make gaming on Windows far nicer for handheld gaming devices. Again, I don't think this is coming to full-blown gaming desktop rigs, but I could be wrong about that. So yeah, that's pretty much it for that. Danny, you've got any other thoughts or opinions on that?
Yeah, I mean, I just hope it's enough. I mean, they've already been selling these Windows handhelds for a while now, and they've been selling enough, right? We've always talked about this chicken egg problem. But it's like, well, Windows sucks on them. If Windows sucks, no one's going to buy them. But Microsoft isn't going to fix the OS if there's no market for it, right? So it seems like they've already escaped that. So Windows has been good enough for a lot of people where it hasn't hampered sales of these things. I think that's a good thing. And I think, going this extra step will definitely prevent people from wanting to leave, because actually, up until a couple months ago, we really didn't have much choice anyway, outside of just buying a Steam Deck. But now that Valve released SteamOS, we talked about that. I was like, oh, I just immediately flashed it on all my handhelds. and didn't look back, you know? So it's like they do have a real opportunity here to sort of even almost out innovate Steam where they can. The
Yeah,
benefit to Microsoft's vision right now is the fact that the diversity of hardware is in their favor, right? Because Steam Deck is great, it's nice hardware, but it's pretty limited, right? Compared to the Legion Go and the rumors for the Legion Go 2, or if you look at the Ally, Ally X, Xbox Ally, you know, these, you got different screen sizes. You also have the ones from, was it Acer? That's making one that's like 10 inches or 11 inches. It's like absolutely massive. Uh, so like you get that benefit, which you can't get necessarily with buying a Steam Deck. Granted, you could still put Steam OS on all those, but I feel like less people will be inclined to do so if the initial out of box experience. That's the other thing too, right? A lot of these devices kick in with that typical out of box experience with Windows 11, which is ideal for a laptop or desktop PC, but not necessarily a gaming handheld.
right.
So hopefully they kind of like address these things and it's enough to quell people and from wanting to switch.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of potential here for them. So
Yeah, it does very much feel like a band-aid solution. It's a great band-aid, but I don't think it's complete. Like I would much rather see
yeah,
down the line like a dedicated edition of Windows for these handhelds.
yes, yeah,
A mode like with a mode that's much more like Xbox OS versus what this is, which is basically an overlay on top of Windows 11 with some things unloaded to make it run a bit smoother. It is again, it's a band-aid solution in my opinion, and you know down the line, whether let's say Microsoft does do an official Xbox handheld in the future, maybe that could be the launch device for this Xbox OS, if you will, that runs on.
right. That's what they really need. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, fully agree. So yeah, that's basically our impressions on the handheld gaming stuff. Like I said, should be coming first in the Ally and LIX, and we'll roll out some more handhelds in 2026.
Actually, just to expand upon that, that's really kind of their potential ace in the pocket. If they can make like an Xbox OS for these things, and you can play any PC game and your Xbox library,
Right.
that's huge, right?
Hmm.
Now you're going to get a lot of people who have consoles or an Xbox at least, who weren't into this because, like, you know, I'm very much into Steam. I like Steam. I play PC games probably more than console now, right? I haven't used my Xbox console in a long time. So it really depends where you're starting from, though. If you're like on the PC side and you love Steam, you know, getting an Xbox device kind of is less incentive. But if you can get one that plays everything and you're coming
Right.
from the Xbox end, it makes more sense then to go buy that than a Steam Deck, right?
Hmm.
Because what are you going to do? Rebuy all your games on Valve, you know? So maybe they can do that. But we've talked about that before with
Yeah.
the challenges there, including licensing, not even the technological challenges, but the licensing challenges and having to negotiate that with companies. We've already seen the challenges with Play Anywhere, which to be honest, I'm glad it's still a thing and still around. I would have thought that would have been something they just kind of gave up on, but it's still around. And I think it's a great incentive where they can get it with these companies. And now that Microsoft has bought a lot of these companies and these publishers, right, they get a little bit more freedom there to do those kind of things. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Right. So let's move on to our final story of the day, and that is Google's ruling. The US, the was it the Department of Justice or something? They ruled
Yeah.
that. So, to give context to this story, about a year ago, the US government ruled Google's monopoly on the search market illegal, and we've been waiting since then to see what that will result in. What punishment they would give to Google, and we now finally know. There was a brief period where we kind of thought that the US government might force Google to sell Chrome and Android to a third-party buyer, but that has been confirmed to not be necessary. So Google gets to keep Chrome and Android, but there are some rules and some things that are being put in place that Google must do now as a result of this. And one of the big ones there is that they have been ordered to start sharing search data with rivals, including Microsoft. And so ideally, with this ruling, Google will have to share some of the secret sauce it has that makes Google so successful with the likes of Bing and Yahoo and maybe Ask Jeeves and whatever other search engines are out there, DuckDuckGo. those companies should ideally now benefit from Google's data, and that's ideally is supposed to make the search engine market more competitive. I think it's fair to say one of the biggest reasons that people say Bing is bad is the search data. The actual search results aren't very good, at least in non-US markets. I always find Bing to be worse than Google when it comes to search results. Can't speak for if that's the case in the US, but at least in the UK, it's just not as strong. It just isn't. And so I always choose Google whenever I'm doing a search, because Bing, I just can't rely on it being a great search result. But there's more to it than that as well. It's not just the sharing of search data that Google is being required to do. In addition, they're also making the US government is also forcing Google to make some changes to how it conducts itself when it comes to Android, and especially its Android partners. And so what they're doing here is that they're forcing Google to stop. They're forcing Google will no longer be allowed to make exclusive deals with Android makers to set Google products such as Gemini and Chrome as the default. For those who don't know, the reason why a lot of most Android phones you buy only come with Google apps pre-installed, or their own sort of built-in apps, like in regards to, Samsung has its own messaging app and phone apps, but most Android makers don't. They just come with the Google stuff. And the reason for that is it's in the Play services terms and conditions that you can only ship this device or this device with Google's services. If you attempt to ship Firefox as the default browser on here, that voids the conditions, and therefore the Android maker isn't allowed to ship the Google Play Store. The US government is forcing them to stop that. And so what that ideally means is Android OEMs will now have the freedom to go out and make deals with other app developers, such as Microsoft. Samsung could go to Microsoft and say, hey, let's make a deal. Let's have Edge ship as the default browser on our Galaxy phones, or let's have Copilot ship as the default assistant on our Galaxy phones. That would be a huge deal for Microsoft if they could make that happen. But that's now something Google is no longer allowed to stop. And so that's huge. That's a huge deal for the Android world. And what it will ideally mean is in the future, we will see Android phones ship with perhaps better alternatives to Chrome and Gmail and Gemini. Those apps can still be preloaded, but they no longer can be exclusive. And so that is a huge deal, and potentially a huge win for Microsoft, who can likely rustle up some sort of deal with, say, Samsung or OnePlus or Oppo, any Android phone maker out there. And so that's big news. Google's also not allowed. So yeah, I'll read this here. So it says Google cannot make exclusive deals with Android makers to set Google's products such as Gemini and Chrome as the default. It cannot use the Play Store or Chrome browser as leverage to force Android phone makers to include other Google apps on devices. And it is not allowed to prevent Android phone makers and app developers from offering competing services on devices either. It will have to share search index and user interaction data with competitors. And Google can still make deals to preload its own apps on devices. It just cannot prohibit non-Google apps from also being preloaded. So this ruling is ultimately a huge win for Microsoft. I think some people saw this news and thought it meant that Google would no longer be allowed to spend $20 billion a year to ensure it's the default search engine on iPhone, but that's not true. Those partnerships can remain in place. Google is free to make deals with companies. It just can no longer prohibit these companies from not including competing products as well. And so, I guess Apple could turn around and go, yeah, well, we'll still take 20 billion, but we're also gonna, make it so that the user can choose between Google and Bing. I doubt they will. Apple is on record as basically saying they hate Bing. So they probably won't do that. But this mainly impacts Android phones, and it also impacts potentially the browser market, because it will mean that phones can now ship with more than just Chrome. You may be thinking, oh, but Samsung's already been doing this for a long time. Samsung is an exception. I believe phone makers have always been allowed to include their own built-in alternatives. They just can't make deals with third-party developers. So Samsung hasn't been allowed to bundle Edge, but they can build their own internet browser. So that could change now. So if Samsung wanted to give up its own browser and go, hey, we'll just give it to Microsoft, Microsoft can do it.
In fact, Samsung has a beta version of their browser in their own store, which you can download. It has like new features and stuff that they're working on, which is kind of cool. So, I doubt Samsung will give that up. So I think Samsung likes this in there, but I think Samsung Internet is actually really good. I would like them to make a desktop app, but they haven't, sadly. But yeah, so this will be really interesting to see how this
shifts the market, I guess, down the line, because it could give Microsoft an edge. And it also allows Microsoft to sort of get ahead a little bit more in regards to mobile, because I think it's fair to say when it comes to search and browsers and AI assistants, Microsoft is building products that are in use by a fraction of the market compared to all of the other stuff out there. And one of the reasons for that is, Microsoft conceded in mobile. They lost their mobile platform. And so they don't have a front there. The only way they could now have a front is if they make deals with these smartphone OEMs. And up until now, Google has prohibited that from happening. Now Google can't stop that. Microsoft can slide into Oppo's DMs or Samsung's DMs and go, hey, we'll pay you 100 million. Let's get Edge as the default on your next Galaxy. That could happen. Samsung is free to say no, but Samsung also likes money. And so, this could be one way that Microsoft is able to increase usage and market share on mobile. But, that remains to be seen if that actually ends up happening. All of these companies might turn around and go, no, thanks, Microsoft, you suck.
Interesting stuff. Yeah, it would have been nice if this was more significant, because there were talks that it's going to break up Google. They're going to be forced to sell off Chrome and all that kind of stuff. That would have made things a little bit more interesting. But as things have been going in the United States for the last, 20 years now, they seem very reluctant to actually break up tech companies.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is competition with China. I feel like that the United States is hesitant because, if they weaken Google, then China steps in, because that's really what this is all about. Same with the AI stuff, right? Everybody's like, oh, this AI stuff could get out of control. We should put regulations in it. And then everybody looks around the room and all right, who's going to do it first? And everybody knows it's well, if you do that to US companies, China is not going to follow that. They're just going to, all right, well, we're just going to go and try to create AGI. And so they don't want to give that advantage to China. And I think that's kind of probably the same thing here with Google, but yeah, it's kind of a shame. But we'll see how it affects Microsoft and other companies, if at all. But I don't know.
Yeah, I do wonder. I can only assume that there are a lot of Android makers out there who are sort of falling over themselves to set OpenAI as the default assistant on phones. That I can imagine we're going to see down the line, maybe whether it's it probably won't be Samsung, but maybe OnePlus or Nothing or whatever, those smartphone makers will be like, hey, we're the first phone to ship with OpenAI preloaded. Because up until now, that's not been a thing, because I believe Google prohibits that from being a thing, but that's no longer the case. It also really would have been interesting to see had they been forced to sell Android, who would have bought Android? Surely they wouldn't have allowed Microsoft to buy it. That's too. Well, that doesn't solve any problems. That just gives another big tech company. That's they'd have to give it to someone, sell it to someone smaller. But I don't even know who would buy Android. Would they allow Samsung? No, they would never allow Samsung to buy it.
Yeah, I mean, that's just it. It's none of the massive big companies would be allowed to buy it.
Yeah.
So it would have to be some
all the small companies can't afford it.
Right.
Yeah, silly.
Yeah. There's no putting that genie back in the bottle, as they like to say, right? We can't go back in time and just undo all of this. Yeah, I don't know. Not much else to say there.
So yeah, that's basically it for the news this week. I guess we could probably do a thing of the week. Dan, did you watch anything in the last week or so?
Probably. Jeez, I don't know why I have such a problem trying to remember all the movies that I've seen.
I've got a thing of the week. So I watched. So this sort of surprised both me and Dan, I think. But Upload season 4 finally dropped.
Right, I keep forgetting to watch that, even though I told you about it.
Yeah, I did. I watched it over the weekend. I wouldn't jump in at season 4 if you've not seen the show before. I'd probably go back and watch the first season. Season 4 is only 4 episodes long. It's essentially a long movie, and they've split up into 4 episodes just to cap off the storyline because the show has ended. It's one of those weird shows that went on for way longer than I thought it would. I think it only ever had an audience that was just on the cusp of being enough to be renewed every time. But it required a discussion from Amazon every season. So every season's took a little bit longer than it should have, at least in my opinion. And this last season is very much we've given you a limited budget. make do with this and just get the story done. And I'm glad Amazon did that, because I enjoyed the story. I thought it's about, for those that know, it's about it's a fictional world set in the near future where they figured out a way to upload your consciousness to the cloud, so you can sort of live the afterlife virtually in heaven. And it's about, the companies that run these, and the people who are still alive can visit you in your virtual cloud heaven with VR goggles and stuff. It's a comedy, but there's a lot of serious undertones to it. And political commentary as well in some aspects. It's great. I thought it's great. And season 4 very much just caps off the story a little bit quickly. I think it's fair to say, if it was maybe 6 episodes, it might have felt a little bit more natural, but it does feel very like they've just very quickly just getting things shut because the story needs to end. And so yeah, that's what I watched in the last week. And the other thing, I guess, is Invasion season 3 is out on Apple TV. This show is hilarious. Everyone who watches it hates it. It's one of those shows. It's a really high budget sci-fi Apple TV show, but the plot, the stuff that happens in the show is so illogical, so insane, that people just watch it out of hate. I think I actually just like it. It's one of those shows I watch and I just turn my brain off and go, wow, look at the explosions and stuff. But people who actually sit there and try to make it work scientifically hate this show. So I fully recommend the watch, because it might enrage you. You might love it. I love it. I think it's great.
Fair enough. Yeah, I don't know if I have any movies I can recommend. I mean, I think I mentioned Megan 2.0 2 podcasts back. I know I did see Shin Godzilla again. That was a movie that came out in 2019, maybe. I don't know, it was a while ago. It was before the last Godzilla film, but they re-released it in cinemas in 4K. I think it might have had some extra scenes in it. Not sure. That was kind of fun. But yeah, I don't know. I'll think of some stuff. We've been watching Mad Men over again because it's on AMC. They have a channel that just plays Mad Men 24 hours a day, basically. And if you've never seen it, I still recommend that show. I think it's one of the best TV shows of all time. I think it's definitely up there. The acting is just amazing. The plots are great. The characters and actors are great. The set design's amazing. Like, I don't know. It's just a really cool show. But yeah. Something for next week probably, but we'll see. All right. If that's it, we'll do some Q&A with the audience. Otherwise, you can follow us on your favorite social network there. Just look us up, because I'm not going to go through the names again. But as always, we do record this Thursdays, usually 2 p.m. Eastern time on our YouTube channel. And you can go watch the broadcast there if you want and join in the live chat. Otherwise, we'll see you next time. Take care, everyone. Wow, under an hour.
Yeah. I mean, I've been thinking of it this whole week, but there's just nothing to talk about in the tech world.
Yeah,
right now.
Well, that's August for you.
Very slow. So yeah, if there's any questions, do feel free to put them in the chat. We'll hang around for a few minutes and do our best to answer them. If there are no questions, we will leave. Oh dear. Do you think BR_release, the Canary branch at the moment, is a stopgap release for the newer ARM devices that I've heard need a newer platform release than GE? So this is interesting. I actually don't know the answer. As far as I'm aware, I was told ages ago now that those platform requirements would be backported to Germanium. And so I don't think what's being tested in the Canary channel will ship as an official release. I could be wrong about that. I would be very surprised, however, if it happens. I don't think Microsoft has it in them to ship a 25H2 on Germanium for everyone, and then a 26H1 for next-gen ARM devices. I just don't see that happening. It just complicates things. Yeah, I just can't. I can't imagine. I could be wrong, because this is Microsoft and they could want to complicate things. But
that was the case. We're not going to get those new Qualcomm chips then for a while.
Yeah, no, exactly. Right? Yeah, that would mean that we're not going to see Snapdragon X2 in devices until 2026, which I guess could be the case. We have to wait and see, because we're expecting that to be announced in the next couple of weeks, aren't we?
Yeah, September 23rd, I want to say, that week.
Yeah. So if the good ending is that gets announced September 23rd, and then by mid-October, we have the first Snapdragon X2 devices in our hands. That's the good ending. The bad ending is they announced September 23rd, and they say you'll see the first devices at CES 2026, and that makes me sad and cry.
Yep, definitely.
Because by then, Apple M5 has to be out or around the corner. It's like, what are we doing here? Why are we a generation behind already? Do you think Windows handheld mode will be available on PC? It's kind of making PC as a console. Yeah, I don't. It wouldn't be hard for Microsoft to make it an option for PCs. At least as its current implementation is no, because it checks for your screen size as far as I'm aware, and it wants a screen size of 10 inches or less. So if you have a PC, you're likely using a screen that's larger than 10 inches, and so Windows won't show you the option to enable full screen mode. But yeah, that could change down the line. I remember the old nice days when I see you both from Windows Phone days. Yeah, me too. R.I.P. R.I.P. Hopefully AI does allow for new device form factors, and Microsoft does actually get involved with that, because that would be nice. Microsoft glasses. All right, final call for questions. If there are no questions, that will be the end. Let's close that. All right, looks like there will be no more questions. All right, thank you everybody for tuning in. We'll be back next Thursday. Follow us on the socials. We'll keep you updated when we go live. But until then, we will see you next time. Bye-bye.